room, I greet you, brothers and sisters. I greet you, and we should be most pleased because if you do not understand libation, we have to understand it in the context of, as it was in the beginning, so shall it be at the ending. You are here in the struggle for reclamation, information, to be able to reclaim one's own identity. And most of all, to find our place in the sun. Here we are, and here in this great hall, in the middle of Philadelphia, the so-called city of brotherly love. We have some of the most dynamic speakers coming through here. And it's not about foolishness, it's about very important information. And the information brings us closer and closer to an understanding. Cars are built automatically to practically drive themselves. But if you don't have a simple, basic understanding of driving, you'll kill yourself in a computerized car. We have been living for quite some time, and someone somehow took that simple, basic understanding of driving away. When we hear libation, we know that this also is a part of the reclamation. The shoe is no good without the shoestring. Oh, you can get it on your foot, but if you start running, you'll realize how important that little string is. It's to hold that shoe on the foot. So as we are blessed to hear one of our divine brothers, because I've said of Dr. Ben and the whole First World Alliance, and Dr. Clark and Sister Bain and Sister Kefra and Brother Smalls and Professor this and Simmons and all of that, I've said about them as a group of angels walking on the earth with a message that will deliver and resurrect us. We've been so busy looking at a Jesus Christ coming out of the sky. When we get Christ walking on the earth, we don't appreciate them. But yet and still, Christ did walk on the earth. And the thing that got him in trouble was what? Information. You understand? You can forget about all the little spooky other little things. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. I mean it. Because I know Christmas is coming. And we don't want to get profane. And I know Easter's not far behind. And I know we want to dress up in our big hats and things like that. But by the same token, if we can just get beyond those 2 days, the biggest thing that Jesus did was walk on the earth and talk. You understand? It had a little homeless project going here and there. So when they walk amongst us today, we don't seem to be able to make the same connection. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad did it for 44 years. King did it for a little while. Various other people did it. But we are so blind, we could never see the Christianity in them. So I said all of that to say this, before I pour this libation, that just like we rear a child and we know that the information that child has will keep that child from dying if you don't understand the red light or the green light, or what it's going to do in school, if we can pump it up well enough to do well in school, or in these days, don't talk to strangers. So many little things. If we can teach the child will live. Am I right or wrong? Here we are as adults. We have been talking with strangers, going against the red light, and wandering down dark streets, and we are lost. And as a result, our teenagers are lost, And we unfortunately, like the white man, blame it on them. Whoever seen a species on the earth have adults, and the children must find their own way. That's not nature. It's always the adults should teach. So I said that to say this. When we pour this libation, we're pouring it in honor of our divine ancestors. It means they never deserted us. If they had deserted us, we would never be able to pour this libation. If they had deserted us, this man could not have come down here from New York to give you some information. He'd be down here selling you some Avon's products. Do you understand? And some other kind of something. But instead, he's coming to give you something that'll make you go out and make your own Avon's. Or make your own way. So this prayer, by giving the drink on today, which is Saturday, and I had a whole religious ceremony from 5 this morning until I was almost blind, talking to the ancestors, etc. It's so extremely important. When they send a ship out to sea, we see them crack the champagne on the bow. We never paid it any mind. We never questioned it. We never called it voodoo. But when we lift this and do this, I don't know what he's doing. I mean, it might be against Jesus Christ. I mean, I'm a Muslim. I mean, if it's not in Islam, I'm not going to do it. But we never question that. It's all around us. When we say, I toast you, you don't toast someone with water. You do it with champagne. Am I right or wrong? But the only problem is that we're supposed to put some down. In the Pitcher Cooley High, they broke the cap and said, for those who are not here. It's impolite to drink off the top of the bottle. You must give some to those who are not there any longer. Am I right or wrong? So we poured libation in ignorance, and when we got wise and civilized, all of that became voodooism. But we're pouring libation in Yoruba. Olodumare is the Almighty. Ile, the earth. And we're talking about Egun, the ancestors, and the Orishas. Our reply is Ashe, which means, may the Almighty sanction it. The same way we say in church, Amen, or well, you get that from Africa. When someone is praying, you must answer that person. You must second the motion. That's all you're doing. And that reply is Ashe. Mojuba la jami, Mojuba Ashe. Mojuba Olodumare, Mojuba Ashe. Mojuba Ile, Mojuba Ashe. Mojuba gbogbo Egun, Mojuba Ashe. Mojuba gbogbo Òrìṣà, Mojuba Ashe. Mojuba bàbá mi o, Mojuba Ashe. Mojuba ìyá mi o, Mojuba Ashe. Àṣẹ t'Olúwa, àṣẹ. Mo dúpẹ́ lọ́wọ́ Ọlọ́run, àṣẹ. We give praises and thanks to the Almighty. Ashe. We give thanks to our divine ancestors. Ashe. To the earth. Ashe. We give thanks to our guardian angels. Ashe. To our great mothers and great fathers. Ashe. We give a thanks and a calling to the spirits yet unborn. Ashe. We ask for health and strength and food and shelter. Ashe. We ask that no murder, no rape, no killing of any kind, no fires, no earthquakes, no poverty of mind, body, and spirit meet us this day or any days to come. Amen. We ask for the total liberation and reclamation of Africa throughout the world, wherever we may be. Amen. We ask that the spirit of the Honorable Marcus Garvey return to us, be born again, walk the earth, and help us in this reclamation movement. Amen. We ask that the men look back towards the African woman again, reclaim her, and marry, and bring forth the children that must raise these nations again. We ask that our families come together, be they Christians, Muslims, Africanists, Buddhists. May we all become Africans together. Those who do not have a job, let us go out and make one. We ask that all of this misery that has fallen down upon our neighborhoods, which is brought to us by the government itself, the prostitution, the guns, the drugs, the misery, the AIDS, all of this, may we rise up and eradicate it from our lives once and for all. These things we ask in the name of the great and divine ancestors from whence we came. Ashe.
We are asking this lecture series, Nahasi on Earth, Nahasi being the name of the Nubians below the third cataract, we felt was a significant title. It's the Marcus Garvey African Scholar Lecture Series, where we're trying to bring in Africans who have dedicated themselves to the perpetuation of African information for the explicit purpose of our developmental being. Today, Professor Smalls, Brother Smalls, and I'm learning here, so bear with me. Brother Smalls had said he'd be willing to work with us to help us develop what we all think is necessary in this city, which is a study group that would specifically be about the purpose of studying African classical civilization, specifically Kemet. I'm not going to go any further on this. I'm going to ask Brother Smalls to come and share, develop, present, be a part of this development in Philadelphia by embracing us today.
Hotep, brothers and sisters. Assalamu alaikum. Peace and blessings. What I'm saying to the brother is that I'm not talking about coming and organizing anything. You've got enough organizations down here in Philly. You've got enough churches, you've got enough fraternities, you've got enough sororities, you've got enough of every kinds of organizations, just that none of them have the insight, except the few African ones. You got to realize that if we don't give our people more, and if we don't put more light in their consciousness, you're going to keep attending the funerals, you're going to keep going to the bail's bondsman, you're going to keep sitting in sorrow with your friends, you're going to keep talking about why you got to bend your back because it's what's necessary to make the next dollar, and it's not going to change. And the next generation, they're going to kill more of your great-grandchildren. And the next generation, they're going to kill more of your great-great-grandchildren. And we ain't going to be doing nothing about it. White boys from the suburbs are going to come in there with guns and keep killing you. Other foreigners are going to come in with the dope and keep poisoning you. And you're not going to be able to do nothing but keep talking about, I'm leaning on the Lord. Well, the Lord must have fell because we're not standing any longer. And one must be very fair about this matter. Any God that would lead his people through all of this with no light at the end of the tunnel, and the beasts get more glorious every day, either that God isn't worth much or we are not clear on what God is. And so we've got to get down and get serious. And so I've come down today. I have to be speaking in Brooklyn at 8 o'clock tonight, and I just left a thing at City College. But when Brother White called me, we dilly-dallied, and I said, brother, you know, I'm tight on this thing. He said, yeah, Brother James, you got to do it. And I said, well, brother, you know, it don't look like I can make it. So, Brother James, we've been fighting for how long? So I says, Philly's going to be on my agenda today or else. because it's important. This is an old black community in Philadelphia. This is one of the most revolutionary black community in America, historically, in Philadelphia. This is the point, the ending point of the major migration out of the South, especially out of my home, South Carolina, Philadelphia. And somehow Philadelphia, that was always the greatest light of the black world, have fallen into darkness. You know, it seems like ever since we allowed them to come in and murder those young people with the dreadlocks, God taught us a lesson. He burned the whole damn community down to show you were wrong, but yet we didn't understand. We got confused. Thought that the young people was responsible for burning down all of those houses, burning up all that valuable property, all that material stuff that we had abandoned righteousness to get was all lost in a minute. Because we took our babies, even though they may have been in their 30s and 20s, they were our babies, and we gave them to the beasts to be slaughtered and stood by to watch the slaughter.
That's right.
And so God have a way of teaching you a lesson. And because we insist on joining the white man in his historical blood fests, God has kept us in a perpetual blood fest. See, because we don't understand what we're doing. If we aspire to be like these people, you aspire to be in partnership with murder.
That's right.
You aspire to be in partnership with thievery. You aspire to be in partnership with people who do not respect the elders. They can't wait for them to get in the nursing home and leave them there to die. You aspire to be in partnership with people who feel that their children isn't worth nothing to them other than what they could produce for them. You aspire to deal with people who, when a member of the family gets sick, they put them away and forget about them. You aspire to be with people who would go to any length to take the raw material, the land, the labor of another person without thinking a second thought. If we keep on the course that we started on with the so-called civil rights movement, it'll be the same if Jesus, whom many of you believe in that personality, when it went to the Garden of Gethsemane, when it went to pray, and when he was tempted by the devil, it'd be the same if Jesus says, okay, Satan, I'm going to follow you. I'm going to integrate with you, Satan. I'm going to become a partner with you in your deeds so that everything will be all right, and I don't have to have the hardship that comes with opposing what you're about. See, most of us, I got no problem with people who say they are Christians if they are doing what Christ did. I have no problem with people who say they're Muslim if they're doing what Muhammad did. I have no problem with people who say they're Israelite, Hebrews, or Jews if they're doing what the Maccabee family did. I got a problem with hypocrisy even if it's out of ignorance. And that's where we're at. There's no reason for the second largest group. Do you realize that the African Americans is second in size only to the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant in the United States? Do y'all realize that? They keep calling us a minority. Everybody else is a minority except us and the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. And we are only a minority to the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, maybe. Maybe. Because his ranks is so filled now with Jews and Catholics and Poles and everything else, he lost his white Anglo-Saxon Protestantness a long time ago. We may well be singularly the largest ethnic group in America. But we have accepted our enemies calling us minorities, and we have accepted acting out the role of some weak, wimpy minority. Even though we spend as a community nearly $400 billion a year, making us the 6th or 5th largest nation in the world economically, and don't have a damn thing to show for it. Except some clothes which we got to discard in a few years to buy more, or a raggedy piece of an automobile which you could have done well just to have kept the last one and keep it in running shape. or a bunch of cheap furniture that you're going to exchange 4 and 5 times in your lifetime in the same living room and dining room because you forgot what the furniture was for. You thought it was there for people to look at and not there to be used in a certain way. This is not just Philly. This is all of African America I'm talking about. This is our situation. Even when we get the most intellectual training the white man got to offer, we get on TV and talk about the size of each other's penis and the so forth and so on, like Brother Hill and Sister Thomas, or Sister Hill and Brother Thomas did. They were the cream of the crop. They did exactly what the civil rights movement said you should do.
That's right.
They integrated.
That's right.
The brother got so integrated, he integrated the bedroom.
That's right.
He heard Dr. King when he called for little black boys and little white girls to play together, and he went to playing and never stopped. Right? They integrated. They got PhDs. They got law degrees. They worked for the finest firms. They got to the top of the corporate ladders. They did everything they said if you integrated you could be, and all we had was some scum sitting on public television acting like ill-mannered, moral, unethical idiots. That's what we had. Instead of having some proud, strong-backed, clear, African-thinking people, we ended up with the best of the crop. And so you can't put Thomas down and say he was conservative. I'm one of the most conservative people you're going to run into. I'm very conservative. I don't understand what people mean when they say you're conservative, you're liberal. I'm a conservative. Any African who isn't a conservative is a fool. What is it you got to be liberal about or to be liberal with? You've been liberal with your freedom, giving it to the Jews. Jews own you. You've been liberal with your property. The Jews done bought it from you or stole it from you. You've been liberal with the best of your male crop. The Jewish women got them. You've been liberal with the best of your female crop. The Jewish men got them too. We've been liberal with everything, and that's why we're in the situation we're in. We better learn how to conserve what's ours. We need to learn how to become very conservative. We need to think of a time when we were doing good, and if you check out that time, it's when we were very conservative. See, conservatism for white people mean one thing. Conservatism for us should mean something else. White people want to conserve white supremacy. I want to conserve the point in history when Africans had freedom. I want to conserve the notion of our freedom. I want to conserve the way of our ancestors. I can't be comfortable talking about Jesus or talking about Muhammad or talking about Moses or any of those things when I know that man is 25 million years old, and I know that paleontology, anthropology, and archaeology puts him in Africa. I know that Homo sapiens sapien is at least 5+ million years old, and he's also or she's also in Africa. When I know they've done the mitochondrial DNA test more than once and proved that all species in the world of the human come from one black woman. And if we've been around that long and we don't get a whiff of Abraham until 1700 BC, what the hell is all that little fairy tale and mythology is all about that's got us so confused and hating each other and misusing each other? A story told in times too recent to take serious, and we've made it the point at which we determine whether we live or die, and we've killed in the name of it. You've been arguing over the directions you gave to the psychotic member of the family in order that they might function with some sanity, and now he kicked your butt and made you act as psychotic as he is, and then he gives you the same thing. You're still going to be crazy. And if you think what we're allowing isn't that of an insane person, then you'll need to examine yourself and get real. There's nobody in this room more beautiful than anybody else, except in the minds of some backwoods person. There's nobody in this room more ugly than anybody else, except if their deeds paint them so. There's nobody in this room that is more valuable than anybody else, because when I cut off the oxygen for both of them, death is what's going to meet both of them, no matter how valuable they think they are. Equality isn't something we have to fight for. We should simply fight for the right to be right. Fight for the right to be right. In every one of the religions we use, it says, know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. It tells you truth alone will set you free. Yet the truth is the one thing you can't bring even to your family when you get it, and the truth has to do with Africa. Even your mother will reject you out of hand.
That's right.
But then we'll go right out the door and profess in the name of Christ, know the truth, and surely you should be free. And I say, oh my, we African. Get the hell out of here, boy, with that foolishness. Know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. Look in the mirror in the morning, it tells you the truth, and you get angry with the mirror telling you the truth, and you immediately go to a chemical chest, which you call a beauty chest, or a medicine cabinet for the male, or his little bag, whatever that thing we all used to use, and some of us still use, and we begin to go through some chemical rituals to destroy the truth right in front of our face immediately. Michael is just the extreme. All of us do it to one degree or another, every day. Every day. Because some psychotic, misguided, ill-fitted for nature, albino, something that is deficient in something has told that which is proficient in something that the proficient one is inferior, and the proficient one, because they're ignorant of what Baba was trying to tell you, your own heritage feels inferior, even though you look upon the biologically inferior element, because if you're missing something, then and you got something beside you that has the something, then you are indeed inferior to the thing that has the thing you're missing. And that ain't saying nothing but the truth. You don't confuse things when you want to say have a cup of coffee. You don't confuse, you put the coffee to perk and all you get is clear water. You're not confused. Even if it smells like coffee and have the taste of coffee, you don't get confused. You got to see some black, muddy looking stuff coming out and you say, I got some coffee here. Otherwise, you just got some hot water. You don't lie to yourself about the most basic thing. I don't care if the white man says I'm a racist. How could someone who murdered more than 200 million of my kind, who raped to the point of death more than 50 million of my woman, who slaughtered close to 100 million of my children, got the nerve to call me anything? If I killed his mama, I would be justified. Y'all think that's harsh. All his mama gonna produce is another beast to destroy me. I ain't got no more time for that. They've taught us to just stay and let people keep killing us. Police come in our neighborhood and kill us. We get into church and cry and oh Lord, not once did we get up and just say, Jesus, give me the strength to kill the son of a bitch. Not once. I've been to enough funerals. Not once. They took the best I had. They took my baby, Lord. Fuck that. Go kill the cop. Go kill the cop and see how many babies they won't take no more, because they'll think somebody else mama coming to kill them. But they done made y'all so scared to go before God, because y'all want to live forever in this form. Ain't none of us gonna live forever, and ain't nobody know when they're leaving. Ain't none of us gonna live forever, and ain't nobody know when they're gonna leave. You don't know how you're going to leave, even if you put the bullets and the gun to your head. Even if you took the poison, at best you can guarantee it's gonna cause you some harm. You can't guarantee you won't spend the next 20 years in a coma. You can't guarantee you won't spend the next rest of your life paralyzed. Only thing you know for sure is that we're leaving here. We don't know when we're going to leave or by what means. So those three things don't even worry about. They're taken care of for you in advance and in a most permanent and complete way. If you accept and understand that notion, then nobody can make you afraid of death.
That's right.
And then you'll understand why Malcolm said the secret to life is to have no fear, and then you'll understand why he walked in that ballroom that day knowing they were going to kill him. He felt standing up and being a man for you as a symbol of that kind of man was worth more than being a wimp and breathing air. And so he went, knowing what the sentence was. He didn't walk into an accidental ambush. Malcolm knew before he got there he was going to die there, and he knew when he walked in for certain he was going to die there. He knew when he walked on the stage it was all over. He knew that. But he made a choice. If I run, my people would have run. If I act frightened, my people would have acted frightened. So I will go and I will raise my hand. He had made up the little game of get your hand out of my pocket. He taught it. He knew exactly what the game was. And he stood there and took the bullets. Took the bullets for you. But like the brother said, you don't call him Christ. That wasn't crucifixion. Dr. King went to Memphis knowing he would not get out of Memphis alive that second time. It had been told to him. It was made clear to him. He understood he wasn't coming out this time. He knew it. It frightened him a little bit at first, and he went to a downtown hotel, and when certain people prod him, he went on back over to the Lorraine, walking in there, and noticed that the tree that was once in front of his balcony just 2 weeks ago was cut down. He knew the die had been cast, and he didn't run. He got ready to face them, and he took the bullets for you too, but you don't call that crucifixion. See, we need to understand what parable and allegories mean and what symbols mean. The story of Jesus was never a real historical happening. The story of Jesus is to let you know symbolically what must happen in order for you to declare someone to be the anointed Savior. That's all the word Jesus Christ means. It's the anointed Savior. What is it to be anointed? Anointed means to have divine wisdom, a divine understanding, divine knowledge. Divine wisdom and understanding knowledge mean to know the truth and know a way to apply it to the consciousness of other human beings so they can learn it and use it. Savior simply means you are willing to sacrifice yourself and sacrifice what you've got to do that, to exercise and share that truth and that wisdom and that understanding. Ain't nothing bigger about the thing they throwing all the spookism out here that keep you all confused. All of you in this room do something godly, something as an angel at some point in your life. The problem is we're doing it accidentally. It'll be hellified if we start doing it deliberately. But y'all afraid to think like I just discussed. Y'all scared to believe that there was no such historical happening as Jesus. The story of Jesus was told in Africa and is written in stone 3,000-4,000 years before Bethlehem was built by another name. God did not wait for a bunch of little white people to invade the Middle East to have his example of a son or daughter come. I mean, if you read the document, Jesus said, we are all the children. He said to those brothers following him, you are all the son of God when you behave as I do. So the deal has nothing to do with which vagina you came out of. It had to do with how you behave once you got here. But that isn't the way it's taught in the pulpit, unfortunately. And having had a grandfather who was a minister, who was a good man, who believed like I do. I learned more from him. They kicked my poor grandfather out of the church because they thought he was crazy. But he believed in the practical application of the truth and reality, because he was a farmer and he saw God's manifestation every day. He knew if you didn't put any seeds in the ground, you weren't going to get no plants coming out of the ground. He wasn't confused. He knew that once you put it in the ground, if you didn't attend to it with a little care and a little water and a little nourishing, a little love and a little concern, even if it came up, it would die on you. He knew if you didn't prune it and get the grass out and keep enough soil around the roots so the sun didn't kill it, it wouldn't bear no fruit for you. Those were just rules God gave us to use for nurturing and bringing forth the life and up to maturity of all things that has life. Same rules apply to how we rear children. My children, even the adults, don't tell me where to go or don't tell me what to do. I wouldn't tolerate it. They know from the sound. I bet when those who have left home, if they think about doing certain things, they imagine the tone of my voice. Fear is a good tool if used properly. I have smacked some of my kids down so hard, I'm lucky the floor held up. It was better a sore jaw than a morgue slap.
All right.
It was better that that girl heard those words that had her trembling than to be shaken in a hospital from AIDS. It was better me cussing till I had to go to a book to find something that had more than 4 letters than to be holding a conversation over a prison barrier. Because I made a decision, I had 6, me and my wife, that when I brought them here, I was going to take full and absolute responsibility. The state ain't got no authority over my kids, and they better not try to take it. My parents ain't got no authority. They can share with me in the rearing of it. I took authority. I am God in my family. I understood exactly what the Africans did when they created the symbols that the Romans mistook for the Holy Mother, God and child. It was nothing but a symbol of a man, a woman, and a child. And all the Africans was implying was that all women should be treated like God's mother, and that all men should be treated like God, and that all children should be treated like the child of the gods. This half-wit idiot from Europe came in and saw those statues and saw the writings and thought that one woman, that the statue represented one woman who had a special kind of happening with God. And when you see the statue in Egypt, he knocked the man off, broke the man off. But they're going to tell us about single-parent family and stuff. They create the notion of single-parent family right at the root of their religious understanding, which was a misunderstanding of what we left as a message to the future. Imagine what the world would be like if every man respected every woman like she was the mother of God, and every woman respected every man like he was God, and every man and every woman respected every child like that child was the child of God. You wouldn't even need laws. You wouldn't need police. You wouldn't need government. You wouldn't need all this foolishness that you must only have when morality and ethics and laws have broken down. You don't need these things. And old Lao say, I think chapter 64 in the book of the Tao, he says, when people have laws to govern them, ethics and morals have lost their way in governing them. When you need somebody with a gun on their hip to keep you from being uncivil, then you've lost your ability to be civil. But yet you call your civilization, your society, civilization. How could it be civilized when you got prisons, armies, guns, weapons? That is not civilized. But we bought the term, it's civilized. Y'all want to act civilized. When you're civilized, women don't have to worry about being raped in a civilized social order. Children don't have to worry about going hungry in a civilized social order. Men don't have to worry about being unemployed in a civilized social order. So the African, especially you who came out here today against this weather and after having met your responsibilities to your family today, like going to church and cooking and the things the sisters have to do, because sometimes the brothers think they're going to drop dead if they help her cook on a Sunday or something like that, you know. Yeah, y'all ought to get real about that. Y'all not just something to be fed. If we want our women to be all we know she could be, then we need to stop acting like the white man and stop being supremacist against them. You see? Oh, but I'm not letting the sisters off the hook. If you want your men to be all that they should be, stop treating them like boys and demanding manhood from them. You don't want to stop rearing these little boys even when they get gray hair. You still want to be mamaing them and keeping them little boys. And we understand why. During slavery, that was the best way to keep your child alive. Even after slavery, I remember why my parents sent all of my brothers, they got 18, they had to leave South Carolina. Because they know we was big and some of us thought we were bad and that white man would have killed us. So they beat you down as much as they can to kill that spirit in you, and if they couldn't kill it all, then you had to leave home. Only those ones who could submit could stay down there. So we understand where it comes from, but we got to stop it now. You got to make this man the baddest sucker you can make up. You got to make him the bravest thing you could come up with, even if you have to dream of some brave notions. You have to make him the most fearless thing in the world no matter how long he lives. Because to live one day as a man is worth living a whole life as what we see on the street out here. Because that's what the bottom line is. God came in the beginning when we came. And there can be no God without you. See, you got all confused. You thought they could be no you without God. But some of y'all scared of the way I said that. It don't fit right. That ain't the way you've been taught. But the only thing we know about God comes from the mind of a human being. Better listen to that. You don't know nothing about God that did not come from the mind of another human being. You say, well, the Bible is the holy word. Well, that may be true, but some man or woman wrote it down there. You say the Quran is divine revelation. That's fine, but somebody wrote it on that paper for you to read and call it divine revelation. Now, you may want to ask where they get it from, but they're long gone and you will never really know that piece. That don't mean no disrespect to them, but we need to get real. You need to read the books, first of all, before you start killing over them. Most people you hear shooting their mouth off of defending the Quran and the Bible never read the damn thing in the first place. I know it's the truth. I was a Muslim minister for 15 years. One thing I realized about people, once they learn Salaam Alaikum, Rahmatullah, Kif Halik, they didn't want to do nothing else but wear a kufi and carry a rug on their back, make the 5 prayers during the day, learn the prayers by heart. And when I was a teenager in my father's church down in Georgetown, we used to teach catechism and quarterly classes, and everybody just repeat. Who's that? Papa had a thing, you go around the church and he had these pictures set up. So he said, who's that? Jesus and the mother. Who's that? Jesus and the father. And who's that? Jesus on the cross. And who's that? Jesus last supper, until you get to Jesus risen. And then that was the last one, the whole story in pictures. And past that, nobody was interested in Jesus. That gave you a little high, a little emotional pop, on Sunday morning. And you learn a few terms about the Garden of Gethsemane, and Easter we all learn about the Golgotha and the place of the skulls, and we learn that Jesus wept, but we know that Mary went down to the tomb, and then we are told the other Mary went with him, but nobody told us what Magdalena was doing hanging around Jesus so hot and heavy for so long. He ain't told us yet, because everybody's scared to tell the truth, that Jesus had the same desire the rest of us had. You imagine if I was to go down here now and give me a basin and start anointing one of you brothers' wives, y'all would beat the hell out of me. You sure would. You wouldn't go for it. And you're going to tell me that Jesus has this affection, this anointing relationship with this beautiful woman who preachers get up in a pulpit and lie and call a whore and a harlot, and there isn't one word in any Bible anywhere calling Mary Magdalene a whore or a harlot. So why do they insist on telling us she's a whore and a harlot? Only thing that's said in the book is that Jesus cast some demons out the woman. We don't know whether the demon was that she was lying. We don't know whether the demon was that she had a bad cold. We don't know whether the demon was that he didn't go to visit a mother or whatever little bad habit. We assume she was a whore and a harlot.
All right.
Then Jesus certainly spent a lot of time with that whore and harlot. And when all the brothers who had loved him so had abandoned him, that whore was standing at that tomb with full faith and believed that her man was going to rise again. Sisters always be on the money. But unless we understand Magdalene's role, we miss the whole damn story of Jesus. A very important story. Unless you understand the role of the Mother Mary, the two people that are always going to be with you to the bitter end is that woman you call your wife, whether you're married by law or not, and that woman you call your mama. Almost anybody else in the world will abandon your butt. Even when the dead body comes home, who going to be the two there dealing with the undertaker? Your brother be saying, well, I ain't got no money, the nigga didn't live right, I didn't do good by me when I was alive. You know what I'm saying? Your buddy's in the lodge, so, but he ain't paid no dues, and you know. But you know who's gonna be there? That woman, that old woman that brought you here, gonna say, well, I help all the others, I gotta do something for this one. It's the last thing I'm gonna do, and she gonna get her little money out of her little person. She going to the undertaker, if she ain't got enough money, and say, Mr. So-and-so, you notice my boy here, and if you bury my boy, I'll figure a way to get your money to you. And that undertaker gonna let her do it. And that other lady gonna come and say, yeah, well, he left home all right, but he was my husband. And she gonna be there with a little veil crying over. Just look at it if you think I'm kidding. You've been to enough funerals. You know who's sitting up there. Even if the brother treat the sister bad, throw her out on that day. She'll be there with respect to that corpse. So watch those images in the book. Study the thing. Look at it. It's important you learn the lesson the ancestors meant for you to learn, because we are not going to be allowed out of bondage until we go in the way of truth. We are never going to be allowed out of this bondage until we take the right road. We keep slipping off in the wrong path, and hell will be our reward. Until we decided that we're going to be the righteous people, that we're going to act like the righteous people. So you can only be chosen if you act righteous. And any race can be chosen when they choose to act out the role of righteousness. Then you're the chosen one. Just having celebrations and shouting and carrying on and praying and carrying on, that ain't gonna cut it. You're judged by your deeds, not your words. And when we begin to act out the role of lovers of one another, when we begin to act out the role of respecters for one another, when we begin to act out the role of carers for one another, no matter what our situation is, when we can respect the homeless and understand how they got there. But for the grace of God, any one of us could be in any shelter on any corner in a split second from this second.
That's right.
Yet what we do is condemn the unfortunate ones who wasn't as strong as us to make it as long as us. As if it's not going to happen to us. Somewhere, somehow, if it doesn't happen to you, it's going to be your sister, your cousin, your brother, your child, your great-grand, but God will lay that blight at your door. And you're going to have to see it and live with it. No matter how much degrees you got, no matter how much money you got. You look at some of the people that out there in difficulty, they come from pretty well-to-do black families. Grow up in the church. My family was they wasn't no church families like ours. We owned the church. Yet I can't count the junkies. I can't count the crackheads. I can't count the ones that's in and out of jail for not paying child support or for stealing and other things. I can't count the ones who have disrespected the elder people so I feel like killing them. Yes, there are those ones who've kept to the rule. There are the ones like my brother Andrew, who's strong and just seemed like the boy carried a family on his back all by himself. And then there's his 3 boys who I've never heard a distasteful thing from any of the 3, and they're all men now. And then there's my little sister Fruity, she's strong. But in there's all of that other stuff, and all of y'all got it too. It's not just my family. Every family in this room right now got all them things I just mentioned and more. So we know it's real. But what the brother was saying is that there's a road not taken. The only road we have not taken since we've been in America is the road back to Africa. We've taken every road except the one back to Africa. We tried everything. We've been to yoga and this do and Shanga this, and we misunderstood this. But the only road truly not taken is to follow our Shango, or to follow our voodoo, or to hear our Oshun, or to listen to our Legba, or to find our way back to Ptah. But we don't know, most of us. I know in this group some of you surely do, because I know you know those things. But when we were down south, how many people in there was born down in the south? No matter how good that old white doctor was, when things got bad, we headed straight for that back path to the root woman house, didn't we? No matter how much praying they did in that prayer meeting for you to be well, we knew the path to the root woman house.
All right.
But wasn't it a shame that we had to take the back path to the root woman house? See, my grandmother was a root woman. And they made me ashamed of my own mama. Ashamed. I remember feeling ashamed. But I didn't live, and she didn't live for the day to me to go and tell her I am proud, because I understand. But I went ignorantly and said, Mama, did you know? She said, of course I know. You think I'm going to do something I don't know? She knew who she was. She understood when she went to help sick people and took her herbs and roots and polis and leaves and things. She knew she was using medicine out of her historical ancestral past that was going to do some good. And I remember feeling real bad, and I remember her telling me, don't feel bad. She said, because I know what I do. Because she said it, I know what I do. Because she had my understanding. I have to do what God tell me to do. Oh, it's like they say we can't talk like that now, because that ain't good English. I understood that pretty well. The point I'm trying to make is that everything we are looking for to relieve our pain is already with us. Everything we are looking for to relieve our pain is already with us. The one thing, everything but one thing, the thing that'll make us common in the things that are with us. And the one thing that'll make us common is an understanding of African history, knowledge, and tradition. If we are not ashamed to practice the Roman way, and we're not ashamed to practice the Jew way, and we're not ashamed to practice the German Lutheran tradition or the Calvinist Dutch tradition or the Anglican Episcopal Baptist French British tradition, why should we be ashamed to practice the tradition of the most holy people in the world? You imagine after all the raping and murder and killing and emasculating of the men and splitting up of the family by these crackers on the plantation, our women were too high moral, too godly to poison them, even though we had the opportunity and the strength. But there was something about God that didn't allow us to do that. Why can't we build on that strength with an understanding instead of looking at it as weakness? Instead of thinking we were scared. People weren't scared. They weren't scared. I used to think they were scared. They weren't scared. And even though I grew up on a plantation, I know we weren't scared. The man could have slaughtered our moths on the road anytime he drove them in the carriage because he knew what he had done. but we are more God than they are, except we think they're more God than we are. And so we imitate them in their ungodliness instead of setting an example with our godliness. We don't need the white man. We never did. We didn't go to Europe. He came to Africa. We didn't go to Asia. They came to Africa. We didn't want to leave our home. God gave us everything we needed. Somebody had to take us, drag us away, kill us. And even then we brought our way with us. How many people in here are in the Baptist tradition? You don't have to go to church now. I mean, if you were raised in the Baptist tradition, the Methodist tradition, the Catholic tradition. You know, if you go to any of those churches in the white community, and remember, these churches were formed in their culture, you will find one rhythm. Rock of ages, sing for thee, let me go. That's the basic rhythm. Go to one of our churches. You think it's a rap concert. In the name of the Lord. One must ask, what is different about those two churches? Is it just that we sing good? Fundamentally, we don't sing any better than white people on par. It's just that what we have to sing and how we sing it and the way we want to see it sung is different, and maybe different is better. When you go to the Black Baptist church and you see all that throw down, get down, jump over, and I remember they used to jump benches in my church. You didn't have a good Sunday unless a sister leaped the bench or two. Some of y'all remember it too. Y'all just ain't gonna say it, you know. You didn't have a good church on prayer meeting night unless you saw a couple of sisters get up and tore down, and the other sisters formed a circle around them, and they didn't stop it. They just kept their hand from stiffening up by keeping it open, and they just kept her from bumping into this bench, and they let her work it all out. You don't see that in no white church. But you do see that in a Yoruba ceremony. And you do see that in a voodoo ceremony. And you do see that in an Akan ceremony. And you do see that in a Santeria ceremony. And you do see it in a Candomblé ceremony. But the only other place you see it is in the African American Baptist and Methodist and other Reformed churches that we have, Episcopal and Seventh-day Adventists. You see it there. So since our churches are all a copy of white churches, why aren't we the same? And if we are so different, why are we afraid to acknowledge the difference that we can clearly see and put a tag on what makes it so different? If our music is so different from theirs, what is different about it then? The only thing that's different about our music is the African things about our music. And the only thing that's different about our church service is the African things about our church service. And if we begin to acknowledge the things that are different in the institutions we share with the European, we will attach our identity back to us without any restrictiveness. Because we are using Africa all the time. We celebrate Christmas and they celebrate Christmas, but look at the way we handle Christmas and you'll see that we always go to this family reunion thing differently than he does. We do it with an African awareness. Now we got his poison too, where we go and says, here we go, we spend the whole year saving money because things is tough in the world. So we spend the year saving money. Get a nice little nest egg. That could help out if the family, especially if the family pool that little nest egg that everybody done saving that little Christmas club. You can buy a house and set mama up, and each of you took a floor, and the family can live in a communal collective environment and go buy your groceries collectively at the market down there instead of going to a supermarket, and go buy your case of collard greens and 2 cases of chicken and put it in your big freezer in the basement of your house, and you never want for nothing. But what do? We save up all that money, work hard. Then Christmas comes, we give it back to the white man we said we hate so. So he could go buy that house, and him and his children and stuff live in there, and then he can buy that freezer, and he can go to the market, get the fresh food, and store it in his house, take care of his family. while we stay in his roach-infested, ragged, two-bit tenements that he keeps, because we have become what old people used to call fool. You know, you fool, you know. Meaning you don't know what's happening. Meaning you've lost your way. Meaning you don't trust God. Meaning you no longer trust yourself. Meaning you don't love your children. Meaning you don't love yourself. Meaning you don't love your race. Meaning, of course, you don't love God. Primarily, all these things exist because we are fundamentally ignorant about what God is. See, because if you love God, you can love yourself, and if you love yourself, you can love others. But you can't love others unless you love yourself, and you can't love yourself unless you love God, and you can't love what you don't know. And so we're caught not knowing God, so when we even paint pictures of God, we paint the reflection of our enemies as pictures of God. When we reach to buy a picture of God, we buy reflections of our enemies as pictures of God. Which is an even greater sign that we hate God. We hate God so much we make God look like our enemy. And not understand that we're doing that. Everybody know that these people are our enemies. But he's got us so confused that he tells us that you are racist. Because you say, I hurt you when I hit you over the head with the baseball bat. You go, I don't want to be a racist, and maybe it really didn't hurt that much. You're damn right it hurt. And not only am I racist, come here a minute, let me borrow your pistol and blow his brains out. But you think that would be committing a sin, wouldn't you? But of course, when they came in the garden to get Christ, was Peter not wearing a sword? And I held this passive stuff, Jesus was a peaceful man. What in the heck was Peter doing wearing that sword? He chopped the centurion ears off, according to the book, right? This is Peter, man. What is Peter doing wearing a sword? If Peter was wearing the sword, the implication is all the rest was wearing swords. But of course, it's also in the book, according to Father Lawrence Lucas. I hadn't had a chance to ask Father, where's that chapter? But I know Lawrence Lucas don't lie. Where on Good Friday, Jesus asked the brothers, Palm Sunday, how much money you have among you? And they tell Jesus how much money they have among you, among themselves. And Jesus say, how many weapons, how many swords you have among you? And they told him, and Jesus said, take all the money and go buy as many swords as you can. Then why are we saying the things we are saying? Why are we approaching life in the manner we're approaching life and say we're imitating the master of life when the master had no such approach? The poorer you were, the more downtrodden you were, the closer to you Jesus got. Here we are saying we're Christ-like, and the poorer a person is, the more downtrodden is, the farther away from them we get. I'm using Jesus because that's the symbol of deity that you use. It is nothing but a symbol of deity. For my personal self, I would use Olodumiri. I would use Oshun, who's my favorite friend. Legba and me, we just partners because I like to jest and I like to josh and I like to tease and I like to trick a little bit and I like to realize how to move people from the crossroads, but at first they have to enjoy the intensity of being at the crossroads. But I'm going to take you for a slight little journey through a piece of Africa and show you something. And show you how people can fool us right to our face and how we're afraid to look and see what the people do. Now it becomes important that we deal with truth. I'm going to get somebody to help. Now this, of course, is what? No, we speak English here, folks. This is paper. This is paper. It comes from the ancient African word papyrus, right? See how they trick you? They tell you Africans had papyrus, but the Chinese invented paper, yet they got the word paper from the African word papyrus. And you be all confused, right? This is some ancient African paper, right? So I'm going to have two people come up here and hold this one open for me. Yeah, brother and sister, make for good. Hold that open. Let him take one end, you take one. And make sure everybody see that. Now what I want to show you is just some truth. And how to know the truth is surely to be free. Now this is my favorite one. It's all raggedy and beat.
Excuse me. Can you have them come around the room or something?
No, that is not what I want.
That's it, all right.
Well, you're going to see what I want you to see. Just focus. They're going to move it around, not around the room, right from the stage. See, because what I want to do, I can't do it with it moving around the room. Two people come and hold this one. You see how right this is? It's going to require some gentleness. You know, switch it around back and forth like this so everyone can get a general pose. I just want you to generally see. And once I've done what I'm going to do with it, then it can go around the room and y'all can all look at it. Slide down just a little bit. I want someone else to come and hold this one. Okay, come on this side. And hold it up high enough so everybody can see. And switch it around and back and forth. Get animated. Y'all are too stiff. Don't y'all? Hey? Now what's important about this is there's a woman with wings. Now if this was a Christian document, immediately that could only be an angel, right?
All right.
Yeah, but Christianity, Judaism, no Islam is born yet. By thousands of years when this is painted. So why don't they go back to Africa and say, look at the African angels? But they don't do that, do they? They tell you that those little frail, pale things Michelangelo painted on the Sistine Chapel are angels without telling you where Michelangelo got his model. Right? Now this is on the walls of tombs. This is facsimile here. But this is on the walls of tombs and over the doors of temple in hundreds of places in the Nile Valley, Sudan, and Ethiopia. Yet nobody make reference back to the source of the images that the other religions use. But this angel is called what? No. Look at the feather. Ma'at. Truth, justice, and righteousness. Truth, justice, and righteousness. Isn't it something that they would take our feminine figure for truth, justice, and righteousness and make it the angels? Further, they took sister and stood her up, took her wings and put a robe over it, blindfolded sister and called her Lady Justice. You think I'm kidding? Here is her symbol, shown to you by the little feather on the head, and the symbol is the scale of justice in front of every courtroom in America. And here it is again, the scale, which symbolizes Ma'at, truth, justice, and righteousness. Further, these dirty, two-bit, lying, no-good crackers, you got to understand what a cracker really is. That's why your history is so important. You ain't got to be mad with them. I'm just sounding like I'm mad. I wouldn't waste the energy of anger on these people, but I want to make the understanding. So I do a little animated, and stuff. They tell us they get their court system here from Britain and the Magna Carta and all of this crap. There's your Lady Justice. There's your symbol for justice, the scale. There's the 12 judges sitting in judgment with God at the head as the judge, representing the court system using the 42 laws of Ma'at by which the man is judged by. So on these papyrus of Ani, you got the law, you got the judge, you got the jury, you got the scale of justice, you got Lady Justice. So where did the court system in America come from? And why won't they tell our children that? So that they can be infused with the spiritual understanding of the greatness of their people having put together a notion of justice before the cracker got out of the cave. And some of you had this thing on your wall, you just hadn't looked at it. You hadn't looked at the thing deep enough. Relax when you look at these documents we be picking up and bringing back. Just relax. Examine it. Look at it and let it talk to you. When something talks to you, it simply means it reveals to your consciousness and understanding. This paper ain't gonna say, yo, brother, let me tell you something. That ain't the way it's done. When they say the tree talked to somebody in ancient terms, it meant the tree and the person contemplating one another gained an understanding of what they were about, and thus they had spoken to one another through a conscious understanding of what they're about. So it's like someone finding out that a plant or a leaf or something is good for an ailment or something, and then somebody said, well, how'd you learn this? They said, well, the tree told me. They go, yeah, the tree, yeah, we know, we understand. Our fruitcake, the tree told them. But the tree really did tell them. But you got to understand how the tree told them. George Washington Carver said, I learned all these things because I go out in the forest early in the morning and the plants talk to me. So they say he was crazy, right? But they made billions off of his inventions. But he crazy. But they made billions off of him. People beat up old Booker Washington and put him down when nobody would give him a home. Booker gave him a home. When nobody would give him a laboratory, Booker gave him a laboratory. When nobody would trust in him, Booker trusted him. We better look at Booker Washington again. Say, cash your buckets where you are. You nuts talking about leaving Philadelphia and finding some little spot in the suburb. You better cash your buckets where you are. Take what you got and make something out of it. All Booker was saying is like, yo, we got the land. We own the land. We got the knowledge of agriculture. Cash your buckets where you are. Take what you got and make something out of it. But instead, some northern slicksters from Eastern European who wore little black hats hooked up with some northern intellectual and said Booker was all wrong. You got to integrate. Integrating meant that you give up what you got. Let me buy that land so I can open my golf course and tennis course and country club down in South Carolina, down in Beaufort, down in Florida, and you could come live in my tenement in New York and die from tuberculosis. That's what they did to us. That's the thing we bought. We missed the boat. Mr. Booker say, they got an intellectual mafia. I'm going to use Tuskegee and I'm going to build me an intellectual mafia. I'm going to open black business organization, black social organization, black fraternal organization, and I'm going to make sure we could compete. They saw what Booker was doing and they destroyed it. Garvey was one of the greatest men that ever lived, but he came here under the invitation of Mr. Booker T. Washington. Amen. And when Garvey says, well, I'm going to come, but I'm going down in the South where all the black is, Booker said, no, too much terrorism, don't even try it. You come on up here in the urban areas where we've established a little strength and where you can speak without being killed. And when Mr. Garvey got here, yes, he brought the notion of the UNIA, but there was also T. Thomas Fortune and the Afro-American League. There was also the Black Businessmen Association and the Afro-American Business League. We weren't some backwards dodos sitting on a log waiting for somebody to bring us the light. That's never been the nature of our people. We took small lights and made them big lights. Mr. Booker had a little bit of the light. Mr. Garvey had a little bit of the light. Mr. Fortune had a little bit of the light. Mr. Du Bois had a little bit of the light. Sister Tubman had a little bit of the light. Sister Mary Chesterell all of them had a little light. But when they brought those lights together, and look at those occasions in history when those lights came together, then we had bright light, big light. We think of Dr. King, but Dr. King didn't bring himself as the head of that organization. Dr. King was one little light that was used as the conduit for a bunch of other lights, and what came out of the other end was bright light. We don't have to be about no I, me. It doesn't matter who delivered the message as long as the message gets delivered. No one should have any love or acclaim for any single one of us any greater than the love and acclaim for any one of us. And if we can start working that notion, we'll be powerful. But we're not going to start working that notion unless we start looking at African history. See how quickly you can look at it and see things? Let me show you one other thing again. See the little man here? He dies. And you see the dog, they think, oh, the Africans worship the dogs, right? But animals, simply the dog, the jackal, had a way where the jackal would get meat and bury it until it putrefied, until just before the poison would kill you, but just long enough to tenderize it. And the jackal knew instinctively when to dig that meat up and use it, so that the meat would give life to him. So they look at the jackal and say, yeah, he could take the things that are dead and make it life again. So he represents resurrection. So the dead man now is walking with the spirit of resurrection, and his deed is in this pot being weighed against the feather, ma'at, the feather of truth, justice, and righteousness. And his deeds had to be lighter. So he passed over to the scribe. In your tradition, the scribe is called Peter, standing at the gates of heaven, keeping the record of the life and deeds of the people on earth. And you cannot enter the kingdom except to go by him. And once your deeds have been proven light and you got by him, then you had to get to the falcon-headed one. Herod, born of immaculate conception, to the Holy Mother, Isis, as they call her, and Osiris. And that makes him the Son of God. And in the Christian tradition it says you cannot enter the kingdom before the Father except by the Son. But you got to watch it. See, when you get into your history, they can't make that stuff sound like mystery to you, coming out of somebody else's tradition. You know who the plagiarizer is. You know who the counterfeiter is. You know who the copier is. And then when you look all the way over here and you see God sitting up on his throne all proud and big shot looking, you see two women standing at his back. Yeah, the brother ain't got no strength. Their sisters there, mama and wife. And that's what that symbolizes. Mary and the other Mary. It just took all that stuff right out of your history, recast it in their culture, moved it into their historical time zone, and fed it back to you and caused all kinds of confusion. The only reason it caused confusion because you don't have your own history to make a comparison with it. So history becomes an important phenomenon. And to show you how you see that, they just took the 12 judges of your soul and made 12 juries. They took God, Ra, who's sitting there as the chief judge, and made him the justice. They took the 42 laws of Ma'at and made it the legal codes or laws of a country. And there's many more things in there. There's a lot of it I can't read, and a little bit I can read has allowed me to see that people are just misusing us, misguiding us. They take the symbol of our great winged spirit of truth, justice, and righteousness and make it the angels. And we know angels are always guardians of righteousness, but never tell us that that was the symbol of an African woman. Our woman is always portrayed as a maid or a whore. We rarely get an in-between. A maid serving his woman or a whore serving him. And yet our woman is the closest thing to God that we could possibly imagine. Matter of fact, we thought so much that was the case that the first symbol of God was the black woman. You see? And we never abandoned her as a symbol of God. We evolved to the point where we made the man, the woman, and the child the symbol of God. The family became the symbol of God. Because you saw all of it. The Father, the Son, and what he calls the Holy Ghost, because he's scared to put a woman in there as a major factor because he was operating as a homosexual. So y'all could roll those up. That's handy. But that's all right. I got some other Let's just look at a couple of other pictures. Stay up here with me when you finish. Let's look at some other pictures. And what I'm doing this is just to show that history is significant. They're talking about we want to give our children feel-good education. When we talk about multiculturalism or Afrocentricity, they're saying, oh, they're talking about feel-good education. Well, what the hell is wrong with feeling good about education? That's right. What's wrong with feeling good about yourself? As long as white people was feeling good about themselves, it was all right. We're saying, no, don't go. Don't go. Don't go. But when we say we want our children to feel good because they learn better, then all of a sudden feel-good education is wrong. They were teaching us for years self-esteem was one of the most significant things in education. It was one of the major motivating factors. Now they tell us it don't matter whether a child got self-esteem or not. They're out of their minds. Pass these down so each one of you have one. Okay. Oh, this is good. And then let me get 2 or 3 people up on this hand. Okay. Well, you got about 6 there. So a couple other persons come on. See, it's very important that you understand your history. Your history ain't nothing but family tree. It's this family tree. Any one of you, if you can imagine yourself in consciousness, knowing that people had mothers but not having a mother, knowing that they had father but not having a father, knowing they have sister but not having a sister, knowing they have brother but not having a brother, having all these people in the world but not knowing where they're at and not knowing how to identify them. Could you imagine how frustrating that must be? Then think in terms of the race. That is exactly the situation we're in. Now what I want to do is start over here with the sisters. I usually leave them for last, with them putting the sisters up front. Now that sister on the end, I carry that one around. Now all of these photographs was done by Dr. Asa Hilliard of Atlanta U. The sister on the end is almost Nefertari. That's not Nefertiti now, that's Nefertari. The colors that you see is the colors she had painted when she was alive. So she knew what she looked like. Note that the colors are an interplay of red, black, and green. So was Mr. Garvey crazy or was he crazy? Right? Red, black, and green. Notice the sister had, a little classy artist because it's a see-through dress. She's got a pretty decent looking figure under the dress. Which meant that they weren't ashamed of the human body. But they were also modest enough to put the body under something. It wasn't used in some pornographic way. Her husband is the Ramses that the West always try to display in the movie as being so destructive of white people. Well, thank God for Brother Ramses. And we know that that's his black wife. You remember when the Ramses exhibit came to this country? And black people in Dallas start saying, we want to have more say in the exhibit? The Minister of Education in Washington from Egypt said, I don't know what these black people are talking about. They didn't have nothing to do with Egypt. Well, when Dr. Ben raised it in Cairo, he was called back home and dismissed as the Minister of Culture. But his ignorance told him we had nothing to do with it. We are the Egyptian. The next lady is one you've seen a lot, but you've never seen her real portrait. There is one portrait of her that looks like a white woman, but all the other hundreds of her look like a black woman. That's Nefertiti. How come out of all the hundreds, there's more portraits and statues of Nefertiti than any other queen? Because Tel el-Amarna was so preserved. And this is a piece of the one that's on the wall, chiseled in granite stone. Yet the one the Germans got in the museum in Germany looked like a white woman. That's the only one that looked like a white woman. Everything else looks like this. But see, when we start getting into our history, we won't have to look at Nefertiti and worship white beauty. We'll realize that the Nefertiti in the book is an occasion of white people worshiping black beauty to the point they try to change it white. They have become the deviant. But this is the way she saw herself since these was chiseled in her lifetime. Y'all can see this in the back, the image here? Put some energy into looking, brother. Can you see that picture? We'll pass them around. Don't make no excuses for that. The next one is important. Look at those lips on that woman. She didn't make me leave home because I happen to have to think about pretty lips. Now this is Queen Ty. Now in the Berlin Museum, her statue sits next to Nefertiti, but they don't have her in the book. Nefertiti never did anything significantly political, but this lady ruled on the throne with her husband for 60 years and oversaw the sitting of 3 of her sons, Akhenaten, Simkara, and King Tut. But nobody ever told you what the mother looked like. Nobody ever told you that that's Nefertiti's mother-in-law. And the Germans didn't stick her picture in the book, and the Western European scholars didn't stick her picture in the book. Found the statue at the same time in the same workshop. And then her son, Akhenaten. They said, oh, he looked that black because he had a disease. As Dr. Jeffrey said, he had the same disease we had, the lip disease of Africa, the butt disease of Africa, you know, the high cheekbone disease of Africa, the split back forehead disease of Africa. This man should have been, this is Nefertiti's husband, but we don't have nothing about him. Now how can you let the man, the first one that they know of in history to make the worship of one God state religion, not be knowable? Think of this now. They said the whole thing about Western religion is that it's about one God. Then how come the man who showed up 150 years before Moses and laid a principle out there and made it the rule of state not be a claim? Because he's you. And since they're lying, you can't be a claim because you are in a position of deprivation in their society. So how do they tell their children that I'm beating up on God and then still tell their children to love God? Because that's what it amounts to. So after this man, Akhenaten is a beautiful man, need to be understood, need to be learned. What he did, he changed a lot of notions. You understand it when you see the paintings. Before him, all of the pharaohs would paint themselves or sculpt themselves gigantic, and their wives would be little imaged by their feet. But in his time, the woman was painted and sculpted the same size as the man, which is the notion of equality of the female in the social order under this man's reign. And this time, he humanized the throne and leadership. Before him, you never saw a pharaoh or king playing with their children or being affectionate with their wife in any public kind of debate or forum. But you'll always see him painted holding his wife's hands or touching his wife or holding his children or hugging his children, which brought a whole nother human dimension to the leadership. So they call that time under him the Amarna Revolution. Yet we don't know nothing about this man, but his wife pictures changed to white is flashed all over the world to throw you psychologically off and make you not look at Egypt. Because if you thought it was a white thing, you wouldn't look at it. And meantime, this big old black thing is standing there. You see. Now this is my main man here. This is Amet. Now you can't get no more African looking like that than that. So how did they get confused and made you Brenner the Pharaoh? Brenner had no lip. Look at that brother's lips. Look at the nose, even though they broke the nose off. This man is Pharaoh in 1843 BC. Ain't no Hebrews yet, no Abraham yet. Pyramid already built. All the great temples like the one there, Apet-Asut, is already built, and the Greeks ain't out of the caves yet. So that's not no Ionic and Doric style there. All right? In order to build something like that, you've got to know all of the basic engineering skills. You've got to know trigonometry, you've got to know geometry, you've got to know mathematics, and yes, before Gibral, you got to know algebra. So in the papyrus, the Berlin mathematics papyrus in the Berlin Museum that they took out of Africa, and the Moscow mathematics papyrus in the Moscow Museum, and the Rhine mathematics papyrus in the British Museum, shows that Africans were solving problems using 3 unknowns before the first Hebrews. So why are they going to give the founding of algebra to some Arab who came and invaded Africa and got into our library and learned our math? Because they don't want to tell us the truth. But it ain't for them to tell us the truth. It is for you to know your history. It is for you to know the truth in order to be free. Or but to go to Washington, D.C. and see one of the most significant monuments, a symbol, the Tekanu, a symbol of resurrection, a symbol of strength and power coming out of the feminine consciousness as a restoration of the male consciousness, which had been destroyed by his own ego, which we call Seth. And she restores his ability to produce life, meaning she restored spirituality to the being. I don't want to be climbing on ladders, because that was my kind of speech I wanted to do. I wanted a practical level speech today. When I come back, then we need to get a little more esoterical and really get into some things. Yet they don't tell us that's ours in Washington. They tell us it's the George Washington Memorial. They're telling us a murderer, slave-holding, two-bit rapist cracker should be symbolized by a sacred monument that was hewn by our great mothers and fathers to symbolize our notion of spiritual resurrection. Or we take our Grand Pyramid. They say, oh yeah, it's one of the 8 wonders of the world, all right, because nobody knows how it's built. And then he writes books and make movies about the fact that it was built by some chariots of the gods from the sky down. And got some of us stupidly going around saying that stuff. This was built by the ground, from the ground up, by African men and women as a testament to their God and to their spiritual consciousness. It's just one of hundreds of buildings that made up a major educational complex and spiritual and religious complex. Most of the other buildings and the other 30 or so smaller pyramids was torn down by the Greeks and the Romans and the Persians and the Arabs, so the stones could be used to build their houses and their mosques and their temples. The 3 big ones was just too much for them to tackle, because the stones were too much for them to move. But when you're flying over there by air, you see the rim of the other pyramids. And there are many other building sites there. And underground is nothing but a catacomb of temple, but it was a university and a spiritual learning complex, in the same way we think of a Lincoln Center today, or Fordham University, or Temple University. That's what this was, where the priest and the priestess were trained, where the doctors and the nurses and the herbologists and the botanists was trained in those days. And they know this thing. Yet they've lied to us, because in order to steal our raw material, they had to enslave us and murder us. And because of their envy and hatred for the blackness of our skin, our ability to endure and to be secure, then they had to lie about who we were, so that in his own consciousness he would stay sane, and that his children wouldn't see his own hypocrisy. But it is for us now to know the truth, so that we should be free. And when you see this hairdo, all you have to do is look at a picture of a Menomet on the end over there, or go to Cairo and go to the museum and look in the glass cases where the hair still is, since hair does not deteriorate. It's like fingernails. Open a casket, and no matter how long that person's been dead, as long as there's some nourishment there, them nails are going to grow and that hair is going to grow. And so the hair of the African pharaohs are preserved in the museums in Cairo, and you can see them locked, braided, twists. What we call the Senegalese twist was happening before Senegal. What we call in the French braid was happening before the ice melted on France. And what we call in the dreadlocks was happening before Haile Selassie or Jamaica. It is one of the hairdos of the priest class that's still used in Africa today. When you see what they call a fetish priest in his stages of being developed, this is the way he grows his hair. At some point they can shave it if that's their desire. Many, when you go to Ghana and Nigeria, they still wear it. There are parts of Nigeria where you're told that someone who's born with a hair like this, that they're special, they're gifted people. And others in other societies say if you see them with hair like this, there's a little something wrong with them. But what you got to do is look at the point in history when the different descriptions come, and after the invasion, after the enemy had invaded us, there's something was wrong with us when we act funny, because we killed the enemy. Islam was there for 1,000 years before Christianity killing us in the name of Allah. All praises due. We actually ran to Christianity looking for some relief, just to get the knife plunged in the chest, trying to avoid the one that had been plunged in the back. Yet both of them had a way of looking at God that they had copied from us, but misunderstood the copy. And as we look at this great architectural work, we know where they get all the pillar temples that make up. When you go downtown Philly, you see our temple everywhere. But does our children go down there and see that, walk with pride and say, that's that African temple. Look at that African style. No, we go and bow psychologically because that's Greek and that's Roman. That the thing that is considered most glorious in this culture is not of us. But let's teach our children that when this grand building is built, there is no Rome yet, there is no Greece yet, there is no Sparta yet, there is no Plato, there is no Socrates. Plato said he studied in that university. Thales said he studied in that university. So let's teach our children the truth so that they'll be set free. Let them not just get jokingly snatched about by a little book they give us in school called The Republic, which is Aristotle's writing on Plato. Let's read Plato books, Phaedrus, where Plato say that the African, he called Ethiopian in those days, gave the world all the measuring arts. And he said, but the greatest science of all the African gave to the world is the science of writing. And then we look at the Burmese script, and we look at the Mende script, and we look at the Egyptian script, and we look at the Hausa script, and we look at the Mandingo script, and we look at all the African writing script born before Latin, Greek, or English. We look at the script of Miro, which they claim they can't translate. We look at the Meta-Netia, which they call Greek, which they have only half translated, and then they tell us we didn't write nothing. We gave the world, as the man said, the science of writing. And there's so many African scripts waiting for you and your children and grand and great-grand to translate for us. But you've got to become interested in yourselves first before you look at it and decide to do something about it. The brother was standing up here as a priest. But how many of y'all truly respect him for being a priest? How many of you understand what a priest or a priestess truly is? You think it's some cracker with a little white cloth around his head or some cracker woman with a little rag on her head? I've had a couple of them drop their habits on me more than once. And I'm just talking about any old habit. I used to be bad in my early days too. Had no respect for nothing. I didn't take the habit off, it got dropped on its own. And it's good people drop bad habits now and then, but sometimes they drop good habits. I don't mean to be abusive, but I want to make a point. How could we respect the symbols of others' theocracy and have no regard for the symbols of our theocracy? We've got to always do what he did, explain ourselves. I don't have to explain a damn thing to you or nobody else. Stop doing that. Just do it. Do it. I'm going to end this because Brother Selwyn was gracious. I called the brother, got him out of his bed this morning, and said, brother, I got to go down to Philly and talk to some brothers and sisters down there, and I got to be back to Brooklyn. I know if I tried it on a train, I'm not going to make it. Could you drive me? And his brother said, I'll be over there in a minute. Brother was in my office in 10 minutes. Got somebody else to handle his function where he was running Dr. Jeffrey's 50 Weeks program today, and he never uttered a second word. So we're going to be about our way after a few questions, and then I'm going to go on back to Brooklyn, and it's a church, a Baptist church, is having a manhood ceremony. They're trying to institute a coming of age ceremony for the young men, and they want to put a training thing in place, so I'm helping them with a speech on that tonight. And I would suggest that this community begin, thank you brothers and sisters, and let's give an applause to the brothers and sisters. Tell you what would be two big steps that you can enter into immediately that could help you realize yourself very quickly is to institute the womanhood ceremony and the manhood ceremony among every family in this room. Every child that turned 12 have a ceremony for them, and every child every child in this family that turns 16 have a ceremony, and then in between give them the instructions of what this is about. When you're 12, you're being told about the menstruation and other things that you got to go through as a young woman, and that's not something ugly and dirty. But when a child's menstruation starts, there should be a party, dance and music, the family happy, because here's another one that could produce life that has come to us. Let's celebrate the gloriousness of this coming into being, and not make that child ashamed of herself or have to hide to the point she's scared to tell mama that she's got some red stains on her panties and she's going through trauma because we haven't prepared her for the most sacred journey she'll ever encounter. Let's start doing the right thing. Have a community ceremony. Do it right out there in the street. Get out there, decorate that street and celebrate.
That's right.
Let the world see you celebrating. And when she gets 16, there's other kinds of instructions now, because she's getting ready to move towards man and to get involved. There's another kind of instruction that only sisters can give. Spend 6, 8, 9 months preparing her for the moment of the next big celebration. That child won't be so eager to go out looking for affection and love someplace else in the name of sex. That is just going to create distortions of love reality. Do the same thing for the little brother. If everywhere he turned there was a bigger brother trying to teach him the facts of life, spending time with him so that he ain't never alone, and if he with his peers, there's always an older one or two with him, how could they then go wrong despite the depth that has been placed out here before us? Institute the manhood ceremony. You got brothers and sisters among you who know how to show you how to do that thing. We already know some of it. We call it cotillion, but we think it's a white boy thing. That's a little piece of your thing. Add the Africanness back to your cotillion. Save your children. Save them from their own abuse. Get control of yourself. You know how much more you'd be renewed if you were struggling to save your babies in a concerted way that involved you in their lives all the time. You wouldn't have time to be feeling sorry for yourself.
All right.
You wouldn't have time to worry about what somebody didn't give you, and then this one didn't call me, and that one wasn't here for my birthday, and I did this for them, but they did nothing for me. So what? Do what you do for the sake of God and righteousness, and not for nothing or nobody else, and what you do will be well done, and it will always come back to you. It will always come back to you. That's the African way. See, we've confused this thing because we don't know the African way. We think there's the white man's way and God's way. Well, let me tell you a secret. The African way is God's way.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
The culture of Africa is the culture of godliness.
That's right.
Everything the white man know about God, he learned it from studying the African culture when we were writing about ourselves.
All right.
All we were trying to do is explain how we should behave. We were in the beginning, so we behaved the way God intended for things to behave. And we wrote on these things and started these schools to keep us consistent and in harmony. He came along and thought that this was some fancy little aside that you did when you wasn't killing, and he called it religion.
All right.
I gotta go now. I'm gonna end now.
Anybody have any questions? You have a bookstore in Harlem. And we like to patronize and buy. He had brought 2 specific books. This one, The Secret Relationship Between Blacks and Jews, I believe is, for me, is good.
Very important book. Now, it's put out by the Nation of Islam. Now, one would think after they'd beaten up our poor Minister Farrakhan like they did for the what was it? Not the Hamilton. What was his? The dirty religion trip. Gutter religion trip. That he wouldn't dare do nothing that even came close to messing with Jews no more. But this is volume 1 of the 3 volumes I've seen that's on the way, and it pulls the cover off the depth.
Very well documented.
So they couldn't take no chances, so they only use, and they explain how they documented it. They only use Jewish sources. And they were smart. And they only used Jewish sources that they could find corroboration and support evidence for, so that nobody can accuse them of racism or anti-Semitism.
That's right.
They can't, how they say, the little boy from California, you can't touch this?
Yeah.
You can't touch this. It is expensive. It's $25, but I'm selling it down here for $20.
Please get one.
I paid $18.75 per book for the store. But just to recoup my money is what I'm going to do with it, because people need to get it. The secret relationship between blacks and Jews, it tells about their role in the enslaving process, which they claim they wasn't involved in. Not only was they involved in it, when you read this, they ran the operation. They ran the operation. Because they were able to slide into the Dutch community, the British community, the French community, the Portuguese community, the Spanish community. So even if you can't get it now, get this book. Okay?
And another thing for people who signed the list for starting and being part of the ASCAP study group, we will be getting back with you. And from that point, we'll work out how we'll go about the process, and Mother Smalls will provide us with the information as far as the development, as far as tech, and whatever else is necessary. And so you can hurry up.
Yeah, I gave the brother some study guides, and what you could do is print those, duplicate those. But what I made it as a proposal when I came in talking to some of my sisters, I proposed, since, nationally we had this formation called ASCAC, but it rolls by any name. It doesn't have to be called ASCAC. You can call it ASCAC for uniformity and unanimity and be a part of a greater whole, or you can just call it the Philly group. You can call it anything you want. You can call it Africa Now and Here, whatever. But you got to get together. You got to get together as Africans around studying the history of African people. But don't just think the history of African people is the history of African people in Africa. Studying about South Carolina is the history of African people. Studying about the dynamics of the Philadelphia black folks, that's the history of African people. And you learn from their principles and their plight and their work. A great book on Philly is the book One More Day's Journey by Alan Ballard, who was one of my professors. And he talks about the migration of blacks from the south of Philly. In there's an enormous story. You have a priest of the Yoruba here. There is no story as great as the Yoruba story. And I'm no more for or against Yoruba, Akan, any Dogon, but this is one where a house comes intact. Study with them and understand. If you don't want to join the religion, that's fine. Study with and understand. Learn about the creation story from an African perspective. Learn how the earth was formed. You may laugh at first when they said God sent a chicken down to scratch out the sand and get it spread all over the place, but we always were people of good humor, even when we was talking about the beginning. And you're going to hear about this guy who wasn't supposed to have a secret word, but how he went and hid in the house. There's some beautiful things in our creation story. It wasn't just Kumbi. African had rhythm. You understand? And then you can find, if you study Kemet literature, you find there's other creation stories where God Kanoon created man on his potter's wheel. This is an African story too. But God didn't go messing around and belittling woman and making her some rib or a piece of bone. God looked and saw the poor man didn't know what to do with himself and said, well, let me go back to that potter's wheel and get some more clay here. And he made a woman equal in statue, style, power, then the man. And put them together, and we've been having fun since. But we started beating up on each other, misusing each other when we started trying to imitate the white man. Let's go back to imitating the black man and woman. And I bet if we start imitating our African ancestry, we'll stop all this fighting, misusing, and beating and abusing we've been doing. To the degree, anybody saw me when I was on last year Donahue show, he'd only let me speak one time, then he got mad, so I ain't calling you back no more. Because he came to me about this thing about black male and female relationship. I said the degree to which it is negative is the degree to which we are imitating white culture. Now you understand what I was saying, because that was a heavy thing. He understood it so much he made sure he never spoke to me again. The degree to which we have misused each other is the degree to which we imitate the white man's culture, values, and belief. Let's learn about our history and our way of looking at God and our way of loving God and our way of knowing God. And once you learn, see, you ain't got to look at your way of loving yourself. Look at your way of loving God. If you can learn to do that, you automatically love yourself. Even in the Christ literature, he does this magnificent sermon. He get up there preaching, and he must have talked about the sermon, and he's talking about all these great mansions, bragging, my daddy God got all these mansions, got many mansions, and in these mansions, all these pretty rooms and things, and honey and all the stuff is there. I need something to drink. But he's just having a good time talking about the honey and the milk and things. Then the man said, well, Lord, shoot, I'm willing to, I guess the guy probably whispered, I'm willing to commit suicide to get there. Where is this kingdom? Told him, turn your eyes inward. The kingdom is within you. Those mansions are within you. The milk and honey is within you. You understand? Now, if you don't want to take it from me, listen to Jesus. That's good, my brother. It said, the kingdom for which you search so hard ain't in the crackers world, ain't in having his money, ain't in following him in fashion. That the kingdom is within you. That the mansions are within you. That the great throne upon which God sits is within you. That the God indeed that sits on the great throne is within you, folks. If you just wake up to that, you all right. You'll be all right. Every time something starts going wrong, remember that, and you'll be all right. And remember that the culture of Africa is the culture of godliness, and when you imitate God, you are imitating the ancient Africans. After all of that, I probably don't need to take no questions, but we'll take 2 questions.
Can I put you on the spot and ask, would you come back at
I'll come back, and I'm serious. What I had proposed to sisters was that if y'all get together and put on a conference on African civilization. Don't go to Malefi. I love Malefi, but don't go to the colleges. Don't go to none of these people. Y'all get together and do it. I guarantee you I will bring for you, without you having to put out a penny, myself, Len Jeffries, Donna Richards, Shashi McIntyre, Dr. Ben, Dr. Clark, right? To spend that day with you, teaching among you. If you make the first step, get together, plan the day, pick a warm time of the year too. Plan the day, put the literature out there, and I'll even come down here in between and give lectures to help you get people prepped and ready. I can't give no more than that. But it is for this community to build itself. Don't let nobody come from the outside and be no demagogue over you. Don't let nobody come from the outside and be no big guide to you. The best we could do is come in and give you some good advice and go to bed, on back home and clean our houses. You got to build Philly. This is your home. This is your responsibility. You've got to do the work. I'll come in and help you. You know, like down south, somebody building the house, we all showed up there on a Saturday and a Sunday and helped them build. And the person had the obligation to say, well, what I want the room to look like and what I want on the roof, but our job was to hand the tiles up and hand the top and hit the nail and do what that person wants from us. That's the way people should come to you. You know, like when the brother was asking me to come down, I told him, I'll come to do what y'all want, but y'all do the work. I told him, don't worry about me. I was going to walk in the door when time to speak and walk out when I was finished. You want to know when I was going to get here? I don't tell nobody when I'm coming nowhere. But my point is, do your own African thing and we'll come in to help you. But don't be looking towards these other communities' development. You're going to be too busy developing your community. Save your children. Save your women. Save your men. And don't be ashamed to go to the churches and lay down the law according to Christ to them. Who are they to misuse God and then hold the symbol of it up? If you have a problem, read the book. Read the Bible. It's a good book. It started out as a black book before they perverted it. And there's a good piece out. There's a piece out by a brother, Reverend McCrae, out of Chicago, called The Black Presence in the Bible. The brother's done a masterful thing. He said he started out looking for 1 or 2 Africans there, and he found out that he couldn't find no whites there. But see, the white boy done took our traditional literature, where we was just telling some allegorical and mythological story to teach our truth, and he made it a history for himself and changed the image. Well, the brother done pulled the cover off of that. Go ahead and check that out. But don't get hung up just on the Bible. It is just a fraction of Africa. Get on down into Yoruba. Get on down in Mandingo. Get on down there in Zaire. Get on down there in the Zulu and learn about Uncle Uncle Lunk. Learn what Shango really is. Don't think it's just the statue. Learn what Oshu really is. It's not just the statue. It's not that Oshu is happening in arrived at when you are caught at a crossroads in terms of making decisions, which you're caught every day. But if you got a shoe with you, you understand the anxiety when it comes up shouldn't send you in the wrong direction. The anxiety that comes up that we might call a shoe is the stimulation to guide you in the right direction. But if you don't have any direction, you don't have the culture, you don't have the history, when the gods of Africa manifest in you, you'll just self-destruct because you won't know what's happening to you.
That's right.
So learn, and you learn that what we call gods are all functions within our own selves and our environment. And you learn to work with them so that you become the powerful one and your enemies become the weak ones. Yes, sir, brother.
On the picture of Canaanland, you had said Canaanland was 150 years before Moses.
Moses. Yeah, before Moses. He's after Abraham. See, some historians actually who got courage, and I happen to be one, at least a child of history, who believe that he is Moses. There is no other character in the history of the world that comes close to anything called Moses except this man. They've never found his body, they never found his tomb, they never found Nefertiti's body, never found a tomb. That's why they make so much fuss of making Nefertiti white, so you won't look. There ain't nothing. Even Sigmund Freud, the cracker, saw it, and he wrote a book called Moses and Monotheism. And he said it looked like this is what the deal is. But look at it for yourself and it becomes very clear that everything that said Moses did, this man did. Everything.
As far as the belief in the one God, I thought they said that Abraham was before Moses, and Abraham that did that.
No. Abraham was told about this one God by an angel, but where he lived he couldn't worship it, so they sent him to a place where it was all right to do it. Where did they send him? Send him on over to Africa, to Kemet. That is all right to worship one God over there. What does that tell us? It ain't all right to worship one God where he was, but if he went to this place, it'd be all right. So that means we must have been about that. Right? But let me just add something, because you don't want to leave half information. When Akhenaten, and you read in his writing, he said, just as Muhammad the Prophet said, Muhammad the Prophet Ibn Abdullah in Saudi Arabia said, I come not to bring a new religion, but to restore the original way as given to man in the beginning by Allah. Well, we are the man in the beginning, so the original way that we're calling Islam had to have been the African cultural perspective on the world, and it's just as clear calling it Yoruba than it is calling it something else. But no, be quiet, brother. I understand. The second part is to understand what Akhenaten said. Akhenaten said, I am restoring the way of my ancestors, not that I am creating a way.
All right.
He was trying to restore, and even later when Shabaka comes, the Shabaka stone is an attempt to restore the notion of oneness of God. See? So that's why studying the history lets you clear. Even when the Bible was written, it was an attempt before it got perverted in 325 AD by Constantine. Let's not confuse that with what the brothers and sisters was using down in Egypt that we call Coptic. It was an attempt to restore after the destruction of the Persians and the Greeks and the Roman invasion. Christianity was an attempt to restore the African culture with the fragments left behind to those of us who were trapped up there with the beasts. That's all it was. But we only had fragments. But even the fragments threatened the Roman Empire, so they had to co-opt the whole process and mislead us to this day. Judaism was an attempt to restore from fragments after the invasion of the Hyksos. Islam was an attempt to restore after the invasion of the Romans. Study history. Truth alone shall set you free. Know the truth and you should surely be free. I'm on my way back to you.